Got a good video for you guys. Today I'm going to be hopping into my MLB All-Underrated team. I'm going to be naming the most underrated players in all of baseball, position by position. So basically what I'm going to do here is do a 1 through 9 lineup of underrated players and 5 starting pitchers as well. I'm going to throw in a couple of relievers as well. So pretty simple concept here. Now let's hop right into the video. Starting off at the catcher position, the most underrated catcher in baseball, I have to go with Sean Murphy of the Oakland A's. Murphy, in my opinion, has everything you want in a catcher. He has an elite glove behind the plate as he won the Gold Glove Award last year, and he also has 30 home run pop. He's not going to hit for the best average in the world. He's not the fastest catcher in the world either, but in my opinion, all you really look for in a catcher is great power and great defense, and Murphy absolutely gives you both of those. Up to this point in his career, he has 162 game averages of 25 home runs, 75 RBIs, and when you put that together with elite defense behind the plate, Murphy is really one of the best catchers in the game today. And with how hot he started this year, I think he will start getting a lot more recognition, but up to this point in his career, he has simply not been talked about enough. Next up, for the most underrated first baseman in baseball today, I have Josh Bell of the Washington Nationals. Bell has started out the season on fire, and he really looked like one of the best offensive first basemen in the game. Defensively, he's not great, and I don't think he will ever be great, but his offensive numbers are up there with the best of them at first base. Just a couple years ago in Pittsburgh, he had 37 home runs and drove in over 100 runs, and last year in Washington, he had 27 home runs and 88 RBIs, so he really has a lot of power and can drive in lots of runs. Bell is all around an amazing player. I don't think he gets the recognition he deserves because he doesn't have the most marketable personality in the world, and he's not very exciting, but that takes away nothing from his game. Next up, I have Jake Cronenworth of the San Diego Padres. Cronenworth is a really good second baseman, and unfortunately for him, I believe he's overshadowed by his teammates. Superstars like Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. don't make it easy for Cronenworth to get too much attention because they pretty much take it all to themselves. But Cronenworth is a very good second baseman. He was named to the All-Star team last year, and in 2020, when he was a rookie, he nearly won the award, finishing second. He's not amazing at anything, but he's pretty good at everything. I mean, the guy hits for pretty good average, has decent pop, pretty good on the base paths, and he's also pretty solid defensively. So while Cronenworth might not wow you with his numbers or his play out there at second base, he is definitely an above average second baseman, and in my opinion, he's really one of the best second basemen in the game today. Moving over to third base, I have Alex Bregman of the Houston Astros. This one might seem a little bit weird because Bregman is clearly a star in this league and he's one of the best third basemen in the game. But when looking at the best third baseman in the game today, I feel like Bregman's name doesn't come up enough. And the one reason why I believe he doesn't get brought up in those conversations enough is because of his health over the past couple seasons. The past 2 seasons he hasn't been healthy, but in his last full season in 2019, he finished second in the MVP voting. And the year prior, in 2018, when he was healthy, he finished 5th in the MVP voting. And he's still in his late 20s. It's not like he's getting up there in age. He's really in his prime years right now, so if he does stay healthy, I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy in the MVP conversation. He has a pretty decent glove over there at third base. I don't think he's a Gold Glove caliber third baseman, but offensively, he is one of the best in baseball. Moving over to shortstop, I have J.P. Crawford of the Seattle Mariners. Crawford is by no means a superstar, but I don't think he has gotten the love that he deserves. I think he's definitely an above average shortstop. He really doesn't have the best power in the world, but he does hit for a pretty decent average. This year he's come out of the gates on fire, so we'll see. Maybe this will be a career year for JP. Also, in terms of defense, JP Crawford is really good, and he's really an exciting player, so I really don't know why he's underrated because he is a fun player to watch. He has a lot of likable things about him, so I mean, he's a really decent shortstop, and I just don't think he gets the respect he deserves. Starting off in the outfield with our first outfielder, I have Starling Marte of the New York Mets. Marte is one of those players that is known around baseball to be extremely underrated, which in a way might mean he's not necessarily very underrated anymore, but I really just don't think he gets any respect. I mean, this guy is one of the best outfielders in the game. He has elite defense, he hits the cover off the baseball, he can hit above 300 in his sleep, he can steal 40 to 50 bases and also hit double-digit home runs for you. When talking about the best outfielders in the game, his name just never comes up, and I really just, to this day, still think people disrespect him, and I think he is an all-around amazing player, and I think he's definitely one of the more underrated outfielders in the game. For our second outfielder, I have Brian Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, Reynolds isn't necessarily off to the best start in 2022, but I think he will pick things up. Last year, he had another good season in which he had 20 plus home runs and drove in 90 RBIs and really looked like one of the best outfielders from start to finish. He clearly stood out as far and away the best Pittsburgh Pirate, and I think the same will be said for this year. I think, like I said, he's going to pick things up and will get things going sooner rather than later. But I don't think he gets talked about nearly enough because he's on, number one, the Pirates, who are a very bad baseball team right now. They're really not much to speak of. And number two, he's not a very exciting player. But he can hit for a solid average, have 30 home runs, and he is also a pretty decent defender. I don't think he's going to win a Gold Glove, but he can definitely make some highlight reel plays, and he's a pretty athletic guy, so I think he's all around a pretty solid defender. And for our third and final outfield spot, I have Teoscar Hernandez of the Toronto Blue Jays. Hernandez may not be the best defensive outfielder, but offensively, this guy does everything. He can hit for a great average, and he has a lot of power and can drive in lots of runs for you. Last year, in 143 games, Hernandez had 32 home runs and drove in 116 runs in a potent Toronto offense. This year, before getting injured, he was off to a very hot start, and if he comes back fully healthy, I think he'll pick up right where he left off. Now, I think Hernandez is underrated because he's on a loaded team that has a lot of superstar hitters, including Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, George Springer. The list goes on. There's just a lot of good offensive players around Hernandez, and unfortunately, I think he gets the least attention out of all of those hitters. Moving over to the DH position, I have Yordan Alvarez of the Houston Astros. This one was pretty difficult because I really don't think there's too much underrated DHs in the game today, but with how good Alvarez is, I really still think he doesn't get the respect he deserves. If this guy stays healthy for a full 162 game season, which is, I know, a big if, he could put up 50 home runs and win the MVP award. Obviously, defensively, he's not great. He's pretty much a liability out there in the outfield when he does play, but that's why he's a DH. He's simply here for his offense, and he does that very well. But Alvarez has one job, and that's to hit the baseball, and he does that as good as anyone in baseball, and I really don't think he gets treated like it. Moving on to our starting pitchers, the first pitcher today we have is Frankie Montas of the Oakland A's. Montas is an extremely talented pitcher. He really has all-star caliber stuff. He's on Oakland, which is why I think he is underrated. But, I mean, if this guy gets traded, I think he will get a little bit more recognition. But he has some of the best stuff in baseball. Next up, I have Joe Musgrove of the San Diego Padres. Musgrove is pitching like one of the best pitchers in baseball to start this 2022 campaign. And last year, he really looked like an elite pitcher as well. He had a 3.18 ERA and punched out over 200 batters. So he's really a dominant pitcher, but I think he's overshadowed a little bit because of all the other names in San Diego's rotation. Next up, I have Alek Manoah of the Toronto Blue Jays. Manoah showed out in his rookie campaign last year where he had a 3.22 ERA, and this year he looks like a budding ace. Now, Manoah is underrated because he's in the same rotation as guys like Kevin Gausman and Jose Barrios, but I think over time Manoah will slowly get more recognition and ultimately get the recognition he deserves. For our fourth pitcher today, I have Pablo Lopez of the Miami Marlins. Lopez is an extremely talented pitcher who has had a sub-4 ERA each of the past 2 seasons. But like many other players on this list today, he's not necessarily the most exciting player in the world, and he doesn't have a very flashy personality, but his stuff on the mound is very good. And for our fifth and final starting pitcher of today's video, I have Zach Gallen of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Gallen is a very talented pitcher, but the one thing that has been holding him back is his health. The one time where he was healthy for most of the season was in the shortened 60-game 2020 season where he finished top 10 in the National League Cy Young voting. So if this guy does stay healthy, he is going to be a very good pitcher and will ultimately get the respect he deserves because people will start to realize just how good this guy is. Now moving on to our relief pitchers, one pitcher I want to really emphasize here is Raisel Iglesias of the Los Angeles Angels. Iglesias, in my eyes, is a clear-cut top 5 closer in the game today, and he just does not get talked about at all. In 5 of his 7 big league seasons up to this point, he has had a sub-3 ERA. He's on track to have a very good major league career, and he just does not get talked about with the other great closers in baseball today. As for a few other relief pitchers I wanted to give a quick shout out to today, we have Taylor Rogers, Scott Barlow, and Christian Javier. These 3 are very talented relievers who really could make a push for the All-Star team this year. I think they have a lot of talent and really don't get talked about enough. All right, so there you have my all-underrated team. Let me know down below where you agree or where you disagree. I'm curious to see what you guys think because I know there are a ton of underrated players in baseball today. For me, I just think these players that I mentioned really stood out to me as being extremely underrated. But anyways, feel free to subscribe if you guys do enjoy the content. Going to be posting a lot more videos here as we move further into 2022. And lastly, I want to thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.